Hi and welcome to everyone. This is a brief introduction into Vedic astrology. In this session, we're going to cover all the basics of chart interpretation, and in just 6 short modules, I want to teach you how to read a birth chart. We are going to discuss the 9 planets. We speak about the 12 zodiac signs. We're going to speak about the 12 houses, some simple formulas of evaluating strength. We will speak about yogas, not yoga postures, but yoga can also mean combinations. So we'll speak about different combinations in the horoscope and what they mean. And then we'll speak about the Shah, which is one timing method in Vedic astrology. So by the end of watching these 6 modules, you will understand where all the planets in your horoscope are. What does that mean about your love, about your relationships, about your intelligence, about your bodily shape? We will speak about, you will learn about the importance of the zodiac signs. If someone asks you, if someone says, oh, I'm Virgo, I'm Sagittarius, I'm Scorpio, you will be able to understand what it means. You will learn the difference between the ascendant, the moon sign, the sun sign. You will learn more about the 12 houses, which are all distinct areas in our life, like our self, our home, our marriage, our work, our friends. You'll be able the next time after attending this seminar, you'll be able to decipher your horoscope. And if you ever speak with an astrologer, you will know what he is basing his prediction on. And if he's telling you something which is true and has a lot of merit, or if he's just pulling a rabbit out of a hat. So in our first module today, we are going to cover the 9 planets. We're going to speak about the planets as agents of karma. We will speak about a differentiation between the good guys and the bad guys. So the Benefics and Malefic planets. We'll speak about their natural significations, their association to the primordial compounds, their association to the 5 elements, their qualities, and their career, their caste, as they say. First of all, who are the 9 planets? The 9 planets are more than just lights in the sky, right? They're more than just spheres rotating around the sun. No, the 9 planets are described as the agents, as the registered agents of the universe in delivering us our karma. So I put a little funny picture here. It says, "Dear karma, I have a list of people you missed." That is not the correct way to think about karma. Karma literally means action, and karma also means reaction. So some people wonder, is life predestined? If astrology works, is life predestined? And if I have free will, then how can astrology work? So sometimes as a beginner, we can find ourselves in this natural dilemma. And the answer to this is that, yes, your destiny is fixed to some extent, but you also have the free will to move around. There's 3 types of karma that is described in the ancient yoga text. One type of karma is called dṛḍha. It is fixed. It is very, very difficult to change. It is like written into stone. For example, the day that we leave this world, sometimes it can be fixed. There's many combinations that we can, there's many formulas that we can calculate to learn about the longevity of a person. And many times that day can be fixed. There's sometimes other combinations which can reveal fixed karma about our relationships patterns, or fixed karma about our health, etc. However, that fixed karma is only a very small portion of the sum total karma that we have. There is other karma which is called adṛḍha. That type of karma, it's not fixed at all. It is always changing. And that type of karma is the most difficult to predict. Oh, are you going to the gym this afternoon? Or are you going to go to the spa? Right? It will be difficult. In many cases, it will be difficult to predict in that regard. And then there's a lot of karma which is dṛḍha-adṛḍha karma. It is fixed, but is not fixed. So it can be changed. And this karma becomes the most important for the realm of the astrologers, because many things in our life, they are fixed, but they're not fixed as well. And as we learn to identify the chart and read the horoscope, we can also see which patterns are set and which patterns are not set, and which patterns can be changed if we apply a fair amount of work. Now, understanding karma, it's very great because it will help us to claim our own baggage, because it will help us, if we understand our horoscope, it will help us to understand that whatever bad happened to us, more or less, or actually in 100% case, was a reaction to some act that we did in the past. And therefore, everything that happens to us was not because of the government. It was not because of that person or this person. It was not because of our horrible ex-wife or horrible ex-husband, or it was not because of mother who was never there for us, etc. No, all these people, different people in our life, actually were just instrument to give us something that we were due. And a deep, real understanding of karma means actually to stop blaming other people for what happens in our life, but to take responsibility for ourselves, for our own actions, and also for their reactions. Because we have the choice to act, we can choose how we're going to head in our life, but we don't have the choice, of the freedom from the reactions to our actions. Any choice that I make today will influence the rest of my life, and not only this, it will also have repercussions into future lifetimes. And the astrologer, by looking at your horoscope, will be able to see which karmic baggage we were born with. The karma that we were born with is seen in the Rashi chakra in our birth horoscope, and the karma that we've performed in this lifetime is seen in the prashna chart at that time that we contact the astrologer. So a semi-decent astrologer will be well aware of the baggage that we carried until birth, and also the baggage that we are experiencing right now. And a real understanding of karma will mean that we don't punish other people. You have a question?
Yes, I was wondering if the astrologer can also see the karma that we've changed as we've grown in this life, or progressed through this life.
That is a great question. And indeed, this is explained in Prashna Marga. Prashna Marga is one of the more recent astrological books that got written about maybe even less than 1,000 years ago. And the author of Prashna Marga, he writes in the very first chapter that the first thing the astrologer should do when looking at the horoscope, he should look at the prashna. He should look at the time that the client approaches him. And at that time, the learned astrologer will see certain weaknesses and certain afflictions which will indicate the problem the client has. For example, I had one client, that was today. I had one client today, and in the Prashna chart, Saturn and Venus were in a planetary war. So I knew there was a problem with Venus. And then I looked at the horoscope, and in the horoscope I could see also there was a severe affliction to Venus. And if the affliction at the time of question aligns with the affliction in the natal horoscope, then the learned astrologer knows this person is suffering a reaction, not to an action in this life, but to an action from our previous life. However, if in the Prashna chart, at the time the person contacts the astrologer, if at that time there is an affliction which is not repeated in the horoscope at birth, then the astrologer knows, oh, this person has done something bad in this life, and now they're suffering the reaction, and how can we help that person? And the reverse is also true. If the client approaches the astrologer and there's this amazing combination in the prashna, and the client does not have that in the horoscope, then the astrologer knows that, oh, you have made up for it. You were due something very negative, but because of the good deeds that you've practiced in this life, you've cleared it up, and indeed now you're enjoying the good fruits of the good actions that you have performed in this life. Does this answer your question?
Yes, but how would he actually see that the karma is cleared up? Would it just be that if there's a particularly difficult period of time that the astrology sees and it didn't take place, which would mean that the person had cleared up the karma, or is there something else you can see?
Yeah, there's two possibilities. Number one is the said negative event was meant to happen in the past, and the astrologer looks at the horoscope and he knows the prediction, and he speaks to the client and he understands it did not happen. Then in retrospect, he can understand it got cleared up. If the client, however, was approaching the astrologers at the set time, then the Prashna chart will indicate the improvement.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, okay, awesome. And if we truly understand karma, we can claim our own baggage, and we'll also be able to forgive others for the actions they have done to us. And also we can develop compassion for all the other living entities. And a very wrong understanding of karma is to think that, oh, this person is suffering, it is their karma, they deserve it. Or this person is suffering, they have done me evil and they should be even worse. Now, if we think like this, we're not accruing very bad karma, very good karma for ourselves. We are actually acting against dharma. Dharma are is virtue, and the yoga texts explain, like such as Manu Samhita, they explain that a person should always act according to virtue. And if a person breaks virtue, if a person acts against his own desire of self-realization, and also against the desire of self-realization for others, if he harms them or impedes them on the way, he will accrue negative reactions. So if we don't help a person in need, we actually get negative reactions ourselves. And therefore, understanding karma means we shouldn't write a list of all the people that it has missed. No, but we should actually claim our own baggage and start developing compassion for other beings, understanding that vicious circle that they're entrapped in. Because if we don't do that, we will only continue our suffering. If someone does me something bad, and I think they're the problem and not me, and I wish them bad in return, I'm only repeating a vicious circle of bad actions and bad reactions. Now, to prove this philosophy of karma, the astrological classics such as Parsha Arhura Shastra and Prashna Marga give a very scientific and very scientific evaluation of analyzing a person's karma. And the placement of the planets at birth or at the time of a question is instrumental in helping us to read this person's karma. So let's have a look at the 9 planets. I've included some Sanskrit verses here throughout all my slides in my book. If you have read it as well, you will see that I always like to refer to the classics. I'm not the person who just figured out astrology by myself. No, I'm very indebted to all my teachers and guides. And one of the greatest classics in Vedic astrology is dṛḍha-adṛḍha Shastra, which is a book that got written down around 5,000 years ago by the great sage Parashara Muni. It is approximately 100 chapters long and has more than 10,000. No, 10,000, that's an overstatement. 10,000. It has approximately more than 6,000 or 7,000 verses, which all delineate the descriptions of the 9 planets and their association to different karmic reactions. So in the 3rd chapter, in the Graha Gunas Swarupa Adhyaya, Parashara speaks about the 9 planets. And in the 11th verse, he says that among the 9 planets, the Sun, Saturn, Mars, and the waning moon, Rahu and Ketu, they are malefics. While the others, the full moon, Mercury, Jupiter, and Venus, are benefics. Generally, we also count Mercury among the benefic planets. However, if he's conjoined other malefics, he tends to be a little bit more evil. That is because he is a very young age, and like a child, he's easily influenced by his association. So if we have a deeper look, I constructed a table out of this verse. The planets could be broadly categorized into 2 groups. Those planets which are Somya, which are soft-natured, which generally, to keep it simple, like to give us the fruits for our good actions, and those planets which are malefic, which like to deliver us the fruits of our bad action. Now, even the most benevolent among all the planets, Jupiter, can give us bad action. He also can become cruel if influenced by others, but his nature, his natural significations is that of beneficency, while the planets on the right side, their natural mood is that of malefics. Krura is Sanskrit and is the root of the English word cruel, while Somya could be related to the English word soft, but is not as evident as from Krura. Now, the 9 planets, among all the 9 planets, Jupiter is considered the greatest benefic. Whichever area in the horoscope he touches, he blesses and he likes to expand. He's the major significator for our gurus and teachers and the relationship with them. For the woman, he represents the husband. For everyone, he represents children. He's one of the major indicators of wealth. And if Jupiter is well placed in the horoscope, he can destroy 100,000 blemishes. Next in the sequence of benefic planets, we have Venus. Venus is the significator for comforts, for luxuries, for money, for fine clothes and fine food. And for men, she's the indicator of the wife. If Venus is supporting a horoscope and is well placed, a person will have all types of comforts, wealth, beautiful vehicles and cars, fine foods, fine clothing, and a sense of refinement. Next in order, we have Mercury. Mercury can make a person extremely skilled, learned, and knowledgeable. If he's related to the house of career, then we be able to integrate a lot of our skills into our career. He also represents our intelligence, our ability to speak. Next, we have the moon, particularly if the moon is full. If the moon is waning and if we get closer to a new moon, the moon becomes slightly more malefic. But closer to the full moon, the moon also counts among the benefic planets. He gives us, similar to Venus, comforts, ease, and rest. And then in the list of the malefic planets, we have the sun, which is the least malefic. The sun can give us leadership, authority, etc. The sun is very much connected to our father, while the moon is connected to our mother. The mother tends to be more soft-natured in general, while the male principle sometimes can be a little bit more harsh. We can see if we go to India in the summer, the sun can burn us. And so even the sun that we so miss in winter and that we so like to be in, if it is a hot summer in India, the sun just burns us. And therefore the sun is among the malefics. I mean, living in Australia, we can easily see how the sun is a malefic planet. Yes. Mars is the next planet among the malefics. He can give us a lot of ambition, but he can also create quarrel. He is connected to the fire element and he can create a lot of quarrel, arguments, and breakage. If Mars is in the 4th house of home, then we can have trouble at home. In the house of relationships, he can give an argumentative partner, etc. And then we come to Rahu and Ketu. Rahu and Ketu are not planets in Western astrology, and they are used in Western astrology as well. They are called the North Node and the South Node. They are shadowy planets. We cannot see them with our naked eye, but they greatly influence our life. Those Rahu and Ketu are those points that we can mathematically calculate and which cause the eclipses of the sun and the moon. And it is said we're not meant to be doing it, but if we would look into an eclipse, then Rahu is that black halo in front of the sun, and Ketu is that black halo in front of the moon. So in this way, the the nodes, Rahu and Ketu, are those points which cause the eclipses. And even though an eclipse only appears for a very short time visibly to our eye, we can calculate these points all the time. And wherever they are in our horoscope will be points of challenge or trauma. There is this debate, who of the two is more malefic? Is it Saturn or is it Rahu? Some say Rahu because Rahu rules shock. He rules trauma. He can cause sudden events which we cannot forget for the rest of our life. Whilst he can also cause sudden breakages, he can cause sudden deaths, etc. That is pretty horrific, right? Saturn, if he is trying to kill a person, he will take a very long time. If Saturn is the cause of death, a person will know 15 years ahead of time that there is something degenerating and their time is coming to an end. Well, if it is Rahu, they could have just got married and they're in the peak of their life, and the next moment everything falls apart. So there's this debate, who of the two is more malefic? Yes.
You mentioned that although the planets have a particular nature to be benefic or malefic, they still are sometimes influenced by other planets. But I was wondering if some planets are more influenced than others to change their nature.
That's also a great question. As we dive deep into astrology, we will see that different planets can act in different roles. For example, any planet can become a maraka, can become a killer, and can end the life of a person. And then this planet acts like Saturn. Any planet can become badaka and confuse a person like Rahu. And any planet can become gatika and act like Mars and cause an accident. However, the planets also have their naisargika tattva, their natural truth, their natural significations. And those were the significations we were discussing now. Now, when planets associate with each other very closely, or if planets look at each other, they can be influenced. Particularly Mercury, he can be influenced the most easily. While Jupiter, he takes the most to be changed in his direction. And we will learn this as we start evaluating strength. But let us first understand the planets in their nature, in their natural condition.
Just one more question.
Yes.
You mentioned that we shouldn't actually look into the eclipse, but in Western culture, it's a trend to look into the eclipse. So I was wondering what's the reason and what would happen if someone actually did look into it.
If you have seen, whenever they look into eclipses in our Western world, they wear goggles. Because if you look into an eclipse, the light can blind you. And going back 500 years ago, if a person would become blind, that is basically the end of their life. Because it would be very difficult to maintain a job and a family and their different duties. So just from a practical point of view, they were not advised to look into an eclipse because it can blind them and there a lot of things in their life. Besides that, it is also very inauspicious to look into an eclipse. Eclipses are extremely important points in time. There's actually 2 eclipses every 6 months, and those are marker points which reveal different chapters in life. Unfortunately, we won't be able to cover them in this section, but in the future we will have maybe a few 3 or 4 week workshops on eclipses and their impacts on our life. Okay, great. Next, in Parasha Rahura Shastra, he explains the natural significations of the planets. The sun is described as Sarvatma. Sarvatma means the soul of all. And therefore the sun represents our self, our Atma, our soul. The sun also represents our father. And it is from our father that we get our sense of self-esteem, our sense of who am I, what is my place in the world, The sun is also an indicator of career. Especially in traditional cultures, it was more common that the son would follow the career of his father. And we can definitely see the correlation between the son in terms of ourself, the father, and our career. But even in our modern world, where we don't accept the profession of our parents, we can still look at the placement of the sun, its sign, and also its planetary association to learn about a person's career. Because after all, who we are, ourself, our sense of self, our soul, should reflect in the work we're doing. Otherwise, we become very frustrated with our life and we'll be very misdirected. If you're trying to be someone, if you're trying to work if you're trying to be someone, or if you're trying to work somewhere that does not align with our soul, we will not have very happy results. The moon is a representative of our mind. And the moon is also related to our mother. In our mind, we feel and experience different emotions. And in attachment theory, which is one of the major psychological theories in our modern world, they have come to the conclusion that our first year of life and the relationship between the infant and the mother influences our emotional reality for the rest of our life and also influences with how we are bonding with other people. Therefore, the moon in Vedic astrology represents not only the mother, our emotional mind, but also society in general. And if there are negative influences on the moon, then we will have had a negative relationship with our mother, and we will also have more complicated attachment relationships with our intimate partner and with other people in general. In attachment theory, they differentiate between secure attachment style, between an avoidant, dismissive attachment style, an avoidant, disorganized attachment style, and an ambivalent, preoccupied attachment style. And those pretty much correlate to the moon conjoined Saturn, which is avoidant, dismissive. If the moon is conjoined Saturn, we see here, Parashara says Saturn is the giver of grief. Saturn is very much correlated to separation. He rules contraction, he rules limitations. So if Saturn conjoins the moon, there will be separation from the mother. That can be physical, if it is very severe, but it can also be emotional. So if the moon conjoins Saturn and we are born at this time, then circumstances, if there's no remedial measures practiced, circumstances will separate us from our mother as a child in our first year. That can be that we are crying and our mother is not available. Maybe she's working, maybe she's busy, maybe it is not her fault. But these circumstances will arise. And when we don't, and if we are crying as a baby and our mother is not coming after us, then the baby will learn not to cry. And how this comes out in relationships, that we have a partner and we have a problem, and instead of facing the problem and speaking it out, we just don't bring it up and we take it in our own little closet. And as time passes, our partner can get very confused. But we don't want to bring it up because we think, oh, if we cry and if we bring it out, anyways, the other person won't listen. That is the avoidant attachment, avoidant dismissive attachment style. And that is the moon conjoined Saturn. If the moon is conjoined Mars, who is really high energy, it means that the mother, she was a little bit intense. So when she was holding the baby a bit too close and she was always in the face of the baby. And how that plays out later in life in our attachment relationships, it means that if we're in a relationship, we immediately bond with the other person. We very quickly go very far in the relationship, but then suddenly we push away. Like Mars. This is the combination of the moon and Mars. There's too much intensity that is not sustainable. And then there's the moon conjoined Rahu, which is the avoidant, disorganized attachment style, which is in the middle between both of them. Sometimes the mother is too much in the face, sometimes the mother is absolutely not there. So the baby is very confused, and it will just result in very confused attachment styles and relationship styles. Moon and Saturn, we can also say, create depression. The moon and Mars will create anger. Moon and Rahu will create anxiety. And the moon and the sun together which is our fourth malefic. We're just going for all the malefics. Moon and sun is a new moon. So a person will be very introspective because there's no light in the moon whatsoever. We can see that the sun shines and has so much light to give. Well, the moon does not shine itself, but only reflects the light from the sun. So in the same way also, our mind, actually, it has no content itself. It is only reflecting either the light of our soul or all these things that are going on in our world and in the environment. And we can either live a life that is led by our own soul, or we can live a life which is driven by all these bizarre reflections out there in the world. And that is the difference between following the sun and following our soul, or following the moon and following society. And ideally, the moon should always abide by the sun. Now, then we have Mars. Mars is a significator of strength. We can analyze Mars in a horoscope to learn about a person's will, about their courage, about how ambitious they are, and if they're able to stand up for what they want, or if they shy away from battle. Mercury is the planet which gives us our speech, and we can analyze a person's communication style from Mercury. Jupiter is the planet which gives us wisdom. While Mercury rules intelligence and knowledge, Jupiter rules applied knowledge. Knowledge that has that is practical, and also knowledge that has been realized. While Mercury is great in memorizing all different facts which might have no practical utility, Jupiter actually has wisdom about life. Jupiter and Mercury together both are related to our educational system. And we can see teachers who have a very strong Mercury, they will be very expert in organizing knowledge. While teachers of a very strong Jupiter, they have this vast ocean of wisdom, and they're just dropping it all on us. Like, I learned astrology from a teacher who had a very strong Jupiter, and I learned astrology from a teacher with a very strong Mercury. And I can tell you, there's a vast difference. The teacher who had a very strong Jupiter, he would present me all astrological wisdoms that he had learned from 50 or 40 years of study, from dozens of lifetimes of being an astrologer, and he would just dump it all on me, and it took me 3 years before I could understand the first word. While I had this teacher who had a very strong Mercury, and he had it all organized for me. He showed me all the different tables, and this is where you start, this is 1, 2, 3, 4. So this is a little bit the difference between Mercury and Jupiter. Venus represents our sexuality, romance. Romance is very much connected to Venus. Venus also rules our hormones. If Venus becomes weak, we can have hormonal imbalances. Marriage is signified by Jupiter. Also, our level of happiness is also signified by Jupiter. If Venus is very strong, a person will have a great time dating. But if Jupiter is very weak, they will have a difficult time in marriage. If it is reversed, if Venus is weak and Jupiter is very strong, oh, we say fantastic. You will have a hard time finding the one. But then once you found that person, your life will just be so blissful. That is the difference between Venus and Jupiter. Saturn, he's the giver of grief. He rules contraction and limitations. He's the burden that we carry. And Rahu is not mentioned in this list by Parashara, but I included Rahu here. Rahu rules our false ego. Rahu gives a false sense of entitlement. He rules illusions of all types. And Rahu is that planet which tries to bewilder us. Rahu is very much connected to our modern progressive culture. He's very much connected to globalization. Rahu is a planet which loves to cross boundaries. He's the rebel. In his best form, he can be a Greenpeace protester who is tying himself to a tree and saying, "Save nature, to hell with your modern society." That's Rahu in his best form. Or he could be a social revolutionary who is trying to fight a government which is exploiting his citizens. In his worst form, he can be a big cheat, like, not saying any names, but like a big scam artist or a big illusionist who is telling people that he's very trustworthy, but just bringing misery to others and to himself. And Ketu, of all the planets, he's a significator of liberation. He signifies the coming out of illusion and the awakening. He indicates spirituality. So we can look at Ketu to learn a lot about a person's spirituality. While Jupiter will help us to learn about a person's religiosity. Like a person, what is a person showing to the world? That is a little bit more Jupiter. Jupiter is very careful about his presentation to the world, while Ketu is that sage who is just living in the caves and meditating and who couldn't care less what people think about him and who is just diving deep into his practice. There is no end in descriptions about the planets, and indeed in our advanced courses we speak about the identity of the 9 planets for maybe a month or 2 weeks. But we'll all have to start somewhere. Now, the planets are also connected to the 5 elements. While the sun is the soul, the moon is the mind, Mars is connected to the fire element. The fire element is much more than just fire in a fireplace. No, the fire element is that fire in our stomach which helps us to digest food. It is that electricity in our brain which helps us to digest thoughts. There's fire element everywhere. If we study Sankhya philosophy and we learn about all the different components of creation, it is said that the fire element is like one axiomatic truth. It is one element that we cannot further reduce to anything else. And that fire element, it governs, in particular, it governs transformation. So wherever there is transformation, there is also a trace of the fire element. Like when we eat food and it gets transformed into energy, that is because of fire. When we think, that is fire. That mental sharpness comes from the fire element. When a person speaks very loudly and angrily, there's fire element in their speech. Like if Mercury, the planet of speech, communication, conjoins Mars, then a person will have a very sharp voice. If Mars is in his 2nd house of speech, a person can speak angrily. If Mars, the significator of the fire element, is conjoined our sun, then we be very ambitious at heart. Mercury rules the earth element. The earth element is very much connected to giving form to our ideas. It's very much connected to money. It is very much connected to building a house and goods and trading. And therefore Mercury is our primary indicator not only for speech but also for business. Mercury can build things which last a long time. Jupiter is connected to the space element. If we meet a person, if we are in a classroom and there is space for everyone to speak, then we know there's a very good space element. But if everyone is just speaking on top of each other, we know there's a problem with the space. It doesn't feel nice to exist in such an environment. Also, sometimes we can enter a party, we can enter a room and we can feel the frequency of that room, of that group of people. That is all because of Jupiter. If a person has a very strong Jupiter or has a very strong space element in their chart, they can make the environment, they can make a beautiful scene. While if Jupiter is not like that, then we can see the moment we start speaking to that person, we can feel a little bit like, oh, something is not right here. Also, if Jupiter becomes very strong, a person will be able to accommodate many different views and philosophies. And a person endowed with wisdom, naturally he'll be able to make space for everyone. But a person who does not have a lot of wisdom, he can become very narrow-minded and he can even become a fundamentalist. And he can think, this is the one truth and everyone else is wrong. He doesn't give space to others. That is Jupiter. And Venus relates to the water element. Water binds. Water brings people together. For example, we can take our partner to the beach and we can see that water element, it is bringing us together. It will be very different if we take her on a very windy day. The air element, it tends to separate. So if we go with our friends or partner to the beach on a very windy day, it is not really bonding us. The water element is weaker, but there's wind that causes separation. It's not very enjoyable anymore. The air element tends to break and destroy. So we can visualize this with making a loaf of bread. We have our flour, which is the earth element, and then if we mix it with water, all the flour sticks together. So the earth element, it is stable. Flour can last for such a long time. But then we mix water, and all the flour molecules, they bind together. Then we put it in the oven. We heat it up. We introduce the fire element, and suddenly the flour transforms into a loaf. And then what happens if we leave it with the air element? It just breaks and decays. And that is because Saturn rules the air element. Now, a person can have a very fiery speech. A person can have a lot of space in their speech. Like if a person leaves meaningful pauses, it feels so nice. We are able to accumulate and integrate that experience because of that pause, which is Jupiter. While if a person speaks and there is no red thread that is going through, there's no string that goes through his speech, but he's just everywhere, then the air element is very strong in his speech, like Saturn. And if he speaks very cheesy, like if you watch like some Italian romance movie, then that is the water element associated with Mercury. So Venus and Mercury are conjunct. The person will be great in speaking, in flirting, and in speaking cheesily. While if Mercury is conjunct Jupiter, then he will be a great teacher. If Mercury is conjunct Saturn, then a person can feel a little bit limited in his speech. There will be some feeling of contraction. Now, the 5 planets are also connected to different qualities in nature. The yoga texts commonly divide nature according to 3 gunas. We have sattva, which represents goodness. We have rajas, which represents passion. And we have tamas, which represents ignorance. In using more physical language, we can say tamas is that which destroys everything. In physics, we have a force that is called entropy. And entropy pulls everything apart. Entropy destroys organized systems and makes them more unorganized. Now, there's another force which is not termed, but it does exist. And that is a force which brings molecules together. And that is rajas. It is that creative potency. And there's another force which is allowing all the atoms and all the molecules to stay in their orbits. There's another force which is keeping the planets in their orbits, which is maintaining the cells in our body, and which is maintaining this world, and that is sattva. Those forces are not just physical forces, but since we are not different from this world, they also affect our consciousness. And our consciousness, sattva, is that force. You have a question? Okay. In our consciousness, sattva is that force which causes balance and harmony, that force which helps us to grow in knowledge. And what comes with knowledge is an elated sense of happiness, an ability to heal from disease. That is sattva. While rajas rules, in our consciousness, rules desires, particularly unlimited desires. Desires which are not always healthy, desires which are very difficult to be fulfilled. Our modern society is very much a society of rajas. Our modern world has become very expert in creating artificial desires that can never be satisfied. And also in a person in which this rajas element, this rajas quality becomes very strong, he will always be moving around and he will have so many desires that he cannot fulfill. Rajas is very much connected to tamas. If the tamas element becomes very strong, we become tired and lethargic, like a person who has been running around when he should be sitting still, a person who was doing a lot of work at night or in after hours when he should have been resting. The next morning he will not be able to get out of bed and he will feel lethargic. He will feel sleepy and drowsy. And in this way, the Rajas and the Tamas quality, they interact with each other. And the Rajas and the Tamas quality very much govern our mind and our mental states. And all mental disease are born from an imbalance of Rajas and Tamas. All mental disease are born from a deficiency of Sattva. And therefore the planets, the Sun, the Moon, and Jupiter become crucial in analyzing a person's mental health. The Sun represents personality and personality disorders. The Moon represents our mood and mood disorders. And Jupiter refers to our pragya. Pragya means our inner wisdom. Every person is born with an inborn voice of what is good and what is wrong. If a person takes, for example, some medicine which is not good for him, if he's taking some chemicals which are not the best for him, even though the doctor advised, there's an inner voice, an inner knowing, which will communicate to us that this is not good and we should stop. If a person is eating some food which is causing them trouble, if a person has any self-destructive habits, there is an inner knowingness that this is wrong, and this pragya is Jupiter. However, if Jupiter becomes very weak, then a person loses the connection to their own pragya, to their own inborn wisdom, and they can harm themselves by not being able to listen to what is good and what is wrong. While if the moon becomes very weak, a person's mood will be constantly out of balance, as we discussed earlier. And with the sun, it will be a problem of identity, of personality. Was that another question?
Yes. This inner wisdom that you speak about, we could maybe call it intuition. Is it referring to wisdom coming from the soul, or is it referring to wisdom coming from another divine source within us?
That is a great question. I really like this. And actually, this is the wisdom that comes from Jupiter. And Jupiter himself, he's a representation of the cosmos. Because in the earlier chapters of Brihat Parashara Hora Shastra, Parashara Muni was describing how Vishnu, who is the maintainer of the universe, who is the source, who is the conscious being that is the source of the creation, maintenance, and annihilation of this world, that he expands, that he empowers the 9 planets to deliver everyone the fruits of their action. So a person who is born with a great ability to listen to himself, who has a very good intuition, and who has an inborn wisdom. Sometimes we look at these children and we can see if a child has a very strong Jupiter, you can look at this child and you see this child just knows. Already at a young age, they will have a lot of depth. And that is because of their good merits from their previous life, but that is also because of the sanction and blessings from divinity, because they have aligned themselves, they have acted according to virtue in the past. So in this life, they start off a little bit ahead. Or we can have a different example of a person who might not be born like this. Let's say if Jupiter was very weak during birth, but a person has practiced. They have tried to reclaim, to work on their Jupiter karma. They maybe have taken guidance from great souls and great teachers. They have maybe served great gurus, and they have made up for their Jupiter karma. They have read many books on wisdom. Naturally, Jupiter will be pleased. Naturally, Jupiter will get stronger even within this lifetime. And even then, this wisdom, it is still a representation of, it is coming from the divine, but it is manifesting through Jupiter. After all, even all gurus and all teachers that manifest in our life are only a manifestation of of Jupiter. And we can see that sometimes there's many people who go out and they learn from many fake teachers. Can you blame the fake teachers? Maybe you can. but actually all these souls, you look at their Jupiter in their horoscope and you see there's a problem. Jupiter was conjoined Rahu. Jupiter was directly conjoined Saturn. Jupiter was afflicted by all the malefics. Then we can have a person who's cheated by their guru. And was it the guru? Well, it was, but it was this person's karma. It was this person's destiny, which they had not worked off, which they had not cleared, which they have not remedied. And this person, the inner voice, has directed them to the wrong path. And that was only, I think did I answer your question?
Yes.
Yeah.
But if we refer to this Jupiter as being intuition, we could say that every animal has a strong Jupiter, although maybe we don't look at the charts so much. But would you say that?
There's a difference between instinct and intuition. There's a difference between instinct and intuition.
What is the difference?
Especially when we refer to the animal kingdom, we can see animals that have very good instincts. They know where to eat, where to go. And we can say, yes, it is Jupiter, which is directing them to find their food. Jupiter in any horoscope will also tell us about a person's concept of divinity, how they perceive the divine. If Jupiter conjoins Rahu, we can have an atheist. If Jupiter is in a place that he doesn't like, we can also have a person who does not believe in anything. So Jupiter can be seen as divinity. And so, yes, it is true in one sense, in the lives of animals, there is divinity which is guiding them to their food. But we would usually refer to this more than instinct and intuition. But when I refer to intuition, I generally refer to some deeper insight and deeper spiritual realization about the ultimate good and about the higher values and higher actions, while animals generally just hover about eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. While we human beings, we can transcend, we can contemplate about the greater meaning of life. And that is the greater questions of life. And that is very much where Jupiter comes in this inner knowingness.
Okay, so you're defining instinct as an aspect of divinity which is just related to helping the birds or the animals find.
It's also particularly related to survival.
Fulfilling their basic needs, yes. And then, but you're saying that Jupiter is more the divinity guiding us to discover higher knowledge.
Especially in the human form of life.
Okay.
I have not read too many horoscopes of animals, so my answer was quite theoretical. There is descriptions of reading animal horoscopes as well, but that is not relevant for our purposes. Okay. Then we have Venus and Mercury, which are our Rajas planets. And as I mentioned, Rajas is connected to passion and to creation. And we have Venus, which is creating other human beings. Venus is very much related to procreation. And how does Venus create new beings? It is through the attraction between man and female. That is very much related to Venus. While Mercury creates products. He likes to create ideas. He likes to create business, and he likes to create commerce. So most of the time when persons see an astrologer, it is often because of Venus and Mercury, because of not enough money, or because of a marriage that is not working out. So Venus and Mercury are great stirrers. They like to stir up these rhymes in our life. And then any problem in the world, any war, any argument, any fight, it is caused by Mars, Saturn, Rahu, or Ketu. Those are the significators for tamas. They are the significators for destruction. Mars breaks, Saturn decays, and Rahu causes bewilderment and confusion. While Ketu can create a detachment and separation. Now, the planets also have different castes that they're associated with. Castes in the ancient Indian civilization were not necessarily occupations that we were born into. It does not really refer to a person who's born into a particular caste, and because they're born into this family, now they are of this occupation. No, the caste, they would be decided according to a person's quality, and their nature. And the castes were also considered valuable. All of the castes were considered valuable, and all of the castes were needed. So to translate them in more modern terminology, we have every society will have educators, persons who have a greater amount of knowledge, who will act as advisors and guides. Every culture will have people who act as warriors or administrators who like to protect. And every culture will have merchants or persons who like to engage in business and trade. And every culture will have also personalities who are strong and who would like to perform menial labor. And these four categories of work we can see in any living culture in the world. Any culture which does not have one of them will have significant problems. And any culture where those four are not properly maintained will also have significant problems. For example, in our modern society, we live in a culture where the administration is not done by warriors, and the administration is not done according to the advice of the educators. No, we live in a society where the administration is done based on business owners and different lobbyists. So we can see that we live in a society which is controlled by merchants, which is controlled by trade, and which is controlled by money, which is very different to the ancient social structure where we would have warriors manage a country. Warriors would be those persons who have the nature that they love to protect. It just comes very natural to them. They're just very, you could say, paternal and very protective. They have strength and they like to step up to protect the weak. And in the days of yore, society was run by great kings who would use their strength to protect the weak. And they would run the country, but they would take advice from the educators. Even though the educators, the brahmanas, had the greatest wisdom and knowledge, they would not like to get involved in politics. And they would focus their life on study and the gain and sharing of wisdom. And then naturally the administrators, they would protect the educators, they would protect the general people, they would allow personalities to perform trade without being exploited by thieves. And therefore they were able to tax the tradespeople. And the tradespeople naturally would take labor from the working class, and they would pay them in return. That was the ancient social system. We see some perversion of it in our modern society. We can see a particular negative perversion in India, where there's the caste system, which is based on one particular birth into one's family. And we can also see a slight perversion of the system outside of India, where the government is basically run by persons who are just bought by different companies and different lobbyists. Now, taking this back into the realm of astrology, Jupiter is the planet that can make a person educator. Venus is an educator too. However, we can see the difference. Jupiter is an educator in goodness, in sattva, but Venus is an educator in passion. So both of them can make great counselors. Jupiter will counsel a person not only to be comfortable in this life, but also to progress in his spiritual evolution and the journey of the soul. While Venus will counsel a person in such a way that a person will have all the comforts in life right now, can make abundant wealth, buy a big house, and enjoy sex with his wife. That is the counseling of Venus. While the counseling of Jupiter, it is very different, it is very grand, and not even everyone will be able to appreciate it. It requires a lot of sattva to appreciate what Jupiter has to give. So they're both educators, but they're different, because Jupiter is in goodness, while Venus is in passion. And then among the administrators, the sun makes a natural leader, it makes a natural warrior or administrator. And Mars too, there's a difference between them. The sun can make the lawmaker. while Mars is the law enforcement. The law enforcement, they don't think so much. So we can see that Mars is very much in tamas, while the Sun is a lawmaker. The law, sometimes some laws have to be there, even though we often don't like them. Many laws we might not like. Like, for example, we don't like that we have to drive 110 kilometers on the road. Many people don't like it. Why can't we go faster? And then sometimes the law enforcement has to be harsh. Like, you have to get this fine. It doesn't matter. You were only 5 kilometers too fast, but it doesn't matter. You have to get the fine. Otherwise, everyone will speed and there will be more accidents and more people die. So the Sun is pretty much this lawmaker, and the Sun therefore has to be harsh sometimes. Now Mars is the law enforcement. It is the police that's trying to catch us. It is that soldier who is very good in following orders, but who does not understand the depth of every decision. Because Mars is in tamas. Then we have our traits planet. We have the Moon and Mercury. Mercury obviously is our main significator for business. Now, Moon, being the sattva traits person, very much refers to the healthcare system. And the Moon very much relates to the trading of services. But Mercury is very much connected to the trading of goods. Moon refers to our healthcare system, also refers to the hospitality industry where we're selling food. That is all related to the Moon. And any of these planets which is influencing our personality, we will also naturally succeed in careers related to them. So as we go through the different modules, you'll be able to identify which planet relates to your personality and your career, and or to your partner and to your partner's career. So there's a lot of gain in understanding these archetypes and their connections. And then we have the laborers. Saturn in particular represents the laboring class. He particularly refers to skilled labor, while Rahu and Ketu refers to foreign labor, persons who do a job, who might not know what they're doing, who might not even know the language they're speaking. So Rahu and Ketu also represent persons who are not part of the social strata and who like to rebel against society and who like to practice non-conformity. So Rahu and Ketu also can make our classical rebels, our classical persons part of culture, etc. So here we covered our introduction about the 9 planets. We learned about their work and careers that they're associated with. We learned about their qualities in terms of the modes of nature. We learned about the elements that they govern and their natural significations and the good and bad planets. So I hope that was very enjoyable for all of you. In our next module, we're going to speak about the zodiac signs, and we will learn more about the strength of the different planets in different zodiac signs and how the star signs are affecting us and the filter through which we see this world. Do you have any questions, or can we move on?
No questions from me, please.
Okay. Thank you.